Again, if you would just say your name first and or last and where you live.
My name is Angela Green. I live in Oakland, California.
Thank you, Angela, for joining us. How would you describe your spiritual or philosophical perspective?
I hate religion, but I love Jesus.
That's a good one. I like it. How has your spiritual or philosophical perspective evolved over time, and what kind of opportunities or challenges do you think shaped your current perspective?
I grew up in a very religious household, though not dogmatic. So my father was very, like, for instance, I love music, he loved music. He was a jazz musician back in the 1940s, and so even though we were in the church, my father was very lenient of like what we did in music. And because of my situation and because of what I was experiencing and going through as a youth, music became first my refuge, and then it became my salvation. And so either through playing records or listening to music in my room, or sitting down at the piano or an organ or directing a choir, even in all of that, it was my refuge. And so when I transitioned, of course, you know, I could hide and they thought I was a gay male. But once I transitioned, that was all robbed from me initially. And so I was devastated because my spirituality and my relationship with God was very important to me. And so I didn't have the maturity at that time to realize that it was still there. You know, I could still rely on it. So I was listening to people and being brainwashed to believe that I was some deviant that was going to burn in some God-forsaken hell. And then when I thought I had reached my lowest point emotionally, it all came back to me. I just decided to pray. And I found out that the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me was being thrown out of that and being tossed and shunned from religion or the Church of God in Christ. And that's when I found my true freedom in God, was once I was free from that.
It's a beautiful testimony. I got distracted by your answer, so mesmerized by it. We're going to switch gears for a brief. Oh, no. How do you see your work, your job, in the world, and how does your philosophical and spiritual perspective support your work in the world?
Wow. I started out in nursing. I went to undergraduate school. I got my BSN in nursing. And for a few years I was a nurse, and then HIV hit. It was GRID at that time, gay-related immune deficiency syndrome. So then it turned into HIV. And I was one of the ones who volunteered because people didn't want to work with those patients. You had to put on protective clothing and put on a mask and gloves. And so I started out that, and then I went to work for a black physician in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and worked in a private practice. And so he had some patients who were, and this was in a black community in the early 80s, who had HIV, among other things. It was a community clinic. But then I had a first cousin who came down with HIV and AIDS. And so when he passed away in 1995, the church refused to allow his body into the church. And there was a church my aunt had gone to her entire adult life. She was a very dedicated member. The pastor was very adamant, you're not going to let that gay boy in here who has that, that punished. He got what he deserved, and so that devastated me, and it devastated my aunt. And so, you have to cater a body around to find a church to have the funeral in. That made up my mind to go back to graduate school because I wanted to do something more. So I went back and got my master's in public health, and my concentration was infectious disease, and it was HIV and AIDS, and I've been working in it ever since. And so part of the work that I do now that I'm director of health services for a clinic in Oakland, California. And so one of the things that I do with patients and clients, because most of our patients and clients are HIV positive, is help them reconnect spiritually and reclaim what was robbed from them. Our agency is unapologetically black, and for gay people, it's so much, or LGBT or trans, whatever you fall within that spectrum, our spirituality is such an important part of who we are. I've always said that gospel music is the blues of gay people. And so I use that in my work, and my work is my ministry, and my work is my calling.
Wow, that was